Hey everyone, welcome to Learn English No One. Today's story is The Island of Despair and God's Plan. Let's jump right in. A massive freighter, the Sea Serpent, was battling a ferocious storm, waves crashing over its bow like mountains collapsing. The vessel, carrying hundreds of passengers, was ultimately no match for the fury of the ocean. It groaned, shuddered, and then, with a deafening crack, broke apart. The ocean swallowed the ship whole, taking nearly all souls with it, all except one, a 28-year-old man named John. By the grace of some higher power, he was swept onto a piece of wreckage, and somehow, clinging to it, he survived the night. When John regained consciousness, the stinging, salt air assaulted his nostrils. His eyes fluttered open to a desolate scene. He lay upon the white sand of a secluded beach, surrounded by the vast blue ocean. He was alone, utterly alone, on what seemed to be a deserted island off the coast of Thailand. John sat up, the pain in his bruised body a dull throb. As soon as his mind cleared, a wave of gratitude and desperation crashed over him. He fell to his knees, raising his hands to the heavens. "Oh, God, please help me," he cried out, his voice hoarse. "Please send some help, any help at all." Days turned into nights. The scorching sun beat down on the island relentlessly. Every sunrise, John would awaken, his hope a little dimmer than the day before. He would pray, begging for a sign, for rescue, but the island remained stubbornly silent. No ships appeared on the horizon. No planes flew overhead. John's body was growing weaker. His resolve was fading. He spent his nights huddled on the beach, the cold sand offering little comfort. The vast loneliness of the island had seeped into his bones. After nearly a week of fruitless prayer, John's spirit finally gave way. He felt abandoned, forgotten. He had come to accept this desolate island as his final resting place. He stopped looking out to sea, stopped listening for any hopeful sound. Instead, he started to focus on survival. With a grim determination, he began to collect driftwood, palm fronds, and tall grass. He built a small shelter, a crude hut, in the shelter of some palm trees a few yards away from the beach. It wasn't much, but it was something, a place to call his own. He scavenged what he could from the wreckage that had washed ashore, some tattered blankets, a rusty knife, a few pieces of rope. These became precious possessions that he carefully stored within his makeshift home. John learned to live off the land. He discovered that the island was teeming with coconut palms, and he grew adept at cracking them open to get to the milk and flesh. He learned to fish with a sharpened piece of wood, spearing small fish in the shallows and roasting them over a small fire. He spent his days collecting food, repairing his hut, and trying to keep his spirits up. The rhythm of survival became his new reality. Each sunrise the same as the last, and each day more desolate. Days turned into weeks, then months. One day, John, feeling a slight surge of hope, decided to cook his fish over an open fire. He carefully placed the fish on a rock over the flames and took a couple of steps back, and suddenly the wind shifted. Sparks flew upward and caught onto the dry grass and fronds of his shelter. Within moments, the structure was ablaze. The flames licked at the palm fronds, creating a crackling inferno. John watched in horror as his only shelter was consumed, his hard work reduced to ashes and smoke in mere minutes. All of his collected possessions, his meager comforts, gone. He had finally started to feel a small sense of place, and now even that was cruelly taken from him. A wave of anger, a bitter, all-consuming anger, washed over John. He turned his face to the sky, shaking his fist at the heavens. "Oh God," he roared, his voice filled with resentment and pain. "I prayed to you for help. I begged you to send someone, but you ignored me. I built a home here, a shelter, a place to live, and you burned it to the ground. You're cruel. You are so unbelievably cruel." He was overwhelmed with disappointment and despair, and for the rest of the day, he railed at God, berating him for his perceived cruelty, until exhaustion overtook him and he fell asleep on the cold, hard sand. He couldn't see beyond his own perspective. The next morning, John was jolted awake by a loud, persistent noise. It was the rumble of a ship's engine, a sound so unexpected that he thought he was dreaming. He sat bolt upright, his eyes wide with disbelief. There, in the distance, was a large vessel, a ship. It was making its way toward the island, its hull shining brightly under the morning sun. As it got closer, John could make out the details, the flags, the masts, and the figures on deck looking toward him. His heart pounded with a surge of joy, an emotion he hadn't felt in what seemed like an eternity. He scrambled to his feet, waving his arms frantically, yelling and cheering so loud he strained his voice. Finally, help had arrived. The ship, a cargo freighter, anchored a short distance from the shore. A small boat was lowered, and several sailors rowed towards the beach. John could hardly contain his excitement, his legs shaking as he waded into the surf to meet them. They helped him into the boat, and soon he was on the deck of the ship, surrounded by friendly, smiling faces. He was offered fresh water, food, and a place to rest. He was finally safe. After recovering from his ordeal, John couldn't stop himself from asking the ship's captain, a burly man named Captain Smith, "How did you know I was here? How did you know to come to this desolate place?" Captain Smith smiled kindly. "We saw a large smoke signal coming from the island," he explained. "We knew that there must be someone there, so we followed the signal." John was puzzled. "But I didn't send a signal," he said. "I didn't have the means to create a signal fire." The captain looked at him, confused. "But we definitely saw the signal," he insisted. "That's why we came to you." Suddenly, John's eyes widened with realization. He remembered his shelter, his hut burning to the ground. The burning hut had been the signal. The fire he had cursed had, in fact, led to his rescue. He had been so blinded by his anger, by his limited understanding, that he had failed to see the hand of a higher power at work. He understood. It was all part of a plan that was so much bigger than his own limited human vision could possibly have conceived. He had accused God of being cruel, while God had been orchestrating his rescue all along. With tears welling up in his eyes, John fell to his knees, a profound sense of gratitude washing over him. He looked up to the heavens, not with anger, but with deep and heartfelt thanks. He whispered, "Thank you, God," his voice filled with emotion, and he started to thank him repeatedly for the grace he had been shown and for being taken off the island. From his rescue onward, John came to understand the deeper meaning of his island ordeal. He realized that God has a purpose, a plan for all of us. We often try to understand the events of our lives using our limited minds and experiences, but God's vision is infinite. When things go wrong, when disaster strikes, our faith often wavers. We start to lose hope, and we often begin to complain, to question why these things are happening to us. We allow the negative emotions to take control, but in those times of despair, it is essential to hold on to our faith, to have a deeper belief that there is a bigger picture that we can't see. We may never fully understand why certain things happen, but we must trust that everything is part of a larger, more intricate plan, which is always for our greater good. In a world of over 8 billion people, God has a unique plan for each and every one of us. We should keep making efforts, keep moving forward without losing our faith and hope. Our efforts, combined with God's blessing, can get us through any trouble. Therefore, whenever life throws a curveball, when your plans seem to be falling apart, remember that maybe, just maybe, God has a different, better plan in store for you. Remember that God's plan is always bigger, bolder, and better than anything we could have ever imagined. And in that trust, we can find peace, comfort, and the strength to carry on. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed today's video and this incredible story, please leave a comment below and let me know what you thought. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, Learn English No 1, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future videos. Love you. See you soon, my good friend.